Alright, so in today's video, let's talk about 12 scariest games you absolutely need to experience. I'll be sharing my personal thoughts on each of these spine chillers because some of these games left me genuinely shaken. So let's go through the darkest, most terrifying experiences you can have in gaming. I'll start with Visage, a game that truly redefined psychological horror for me. If you've ever wished you could step into one of those haunted houses from the movies but then immediately regret that decision, this game is for you. Inspired by the PT demo, Visage puts you in the middle of a dark, labyrinthine house haunted by malevolent spirits. What makes Visage so terrifying is its pacing. There's no rush to scare you. Instead, it lets dread build slowly, filling every moment with tension. One minute you're walking through a dark hallway, and the next you're questioning if that shadow in the corner moved. I'll admit I had moments where I had to stop and take a breather. That's how intense it gets. Visage is all about the atmosphere. There's something uniquely haunting about its world that doesn't just scare you but makes you feel oppressed. It's like the game itself doesn't want you to finish, and that's what makes it so incredible and so terrifying. Dead Space Remake is another horror experience that just hits differently, especially if you're familiar with the original. Here the visuals have been pushed to a whole new level and the tension is just off the charts. You're trapped on the USG Ishimura, a ship that's become a literal hell on metal rails overrun by these grotesque creatures called necromorphs. And let me tell you, these things do not play around. Each encounter feels like a fight for survival. Instead of just shooting, you have to dismember them, which adds an extra layer of desperation to each battle. But what really gets me is the audio, the creaks, the distant screams, and the sound of something crawling in the walls. It's so immersive that you almost feel like you're there with Isaac, holding your breath along with him as he tiptoes through these dark, tight spaces. The remake does an amazing job of making you feel like you're on a ship in space, completely isolated and vulnerable, which is every horror fan's worst nightmare. If I had to pick one game that genuinely terrified me from start to finish, Outlast would be it. You play as a journalist who sneaks into Mount Massive Asylum armed with nothing but a camcorder, and here's the kicker, you don't have any weapons. When something terrifying comes after you, your only options are to run or hide. The night vision camera mechanic is pure genius because it forces you to rely on a limited battery, which adds this frantic sense of urgency. When the battery is low and you're in total darkness, it's beyond nerve-wracking. And let's not forget the asylum itself. Every room, every hallway is filled with nightmarish patients who seem straight out of a horror film. The game gets in your head because at every turn you feel like you're seconds away from being caught. Outlast is a relentless, heart-pounding journey, and if you haven't experienced it yet, you're in for a true test of courage.
You made the right choice here, bud. Hey, you're that bullshit priest's guy, aren't you? His witness or whatever. You must be exhausted. Let's take a break, huh, buddy? The old 2-martini lunch? Have a little confab, blah, blah. Heavier than you look. A little cardio wouldn't kill you. Okay, here we go, arms and legs inside the car at all times.
Amnesia: The Bunker is a brilliant evolution of the Amnesia franchise, and it definitely leans hard into survival horror. You're trapped in this eerie World War I bunker where limited light and ammo make every choice critical. What I love about this game, but also hate because it's terrifying, is the creature that's stalking you. It learns from how you play. It adapts. It's like the developers wanted to make sure you can never get comfortable no matter how clever you think you're being. The limited resources and pitch-black corridors make you feel claustrophobic, which is the perfect setup for fear. The game is relentless in making you confront your choices. You can't afford to be careless because the moment you think you're safe, the creature finds you. It's psychological horror in a survival setting, and it keeps you on edge the entire time. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was right behind me, watching, waiting. It's just fantastic. The Evil Within is a wild ride, and it's a must-play for fans of survival horror with a psychological twist. Directed by Shinji Mikami, the guy who brought us Resident Evil, this game throws you into a nightmare world where reality constantly shifts. You play as Detective Sebastian Castellanos, and the things you face are straight out of the worst nightmares imaginable. From chainsaw-wielding maniacs to twisted monsters that defy description, the game throws everything at you. The story is complex and filled with unexpected twists that keep you guessing. And there's something deeply unsettling about the environments. It feels like the world itself is out to get you. I love that The Evil Within combines psychological horror with traditional survival elements. The result is a game that's as thrilling as it is terrifying, and it never lets you feel safe, not even for a second. Condemned Criminal Origins is one of the most underrated horror games in my opinion. This game really captures the grittiness of a crime thriller and combines it with intense horror elements. You play as an FBI agent tracking down a serial killer, but things take a horrifying turn. The combat is brutal and feels so raw. You're using pipes, boards, whatever you can find to defend yourself. But what makes this game terrifying is the atmosphere. The settings are these run-down, abandoned locations, and there's something about the silence that's unnerving. When you do encounter enemies, they come at you with such ferocity that you feel like every fight is life or death. The sound design alone makes every encounter terrifying because you can hear enemies moving around, sometimes just out of sight. Condemned is gritty, unfiltered horror, and if you haven't played it, you're missing out. Soma is a horror game, but it's also so much more. It's set in an underwater research facility where things have gone horribly wrong, and it plays with themes of consciousness, identity, and what it really means to be human. The horror here is more psychological. It doesn't just scare you with monsters, but with ideas that make you question everything. There's this constant sense of isolation, and the facility feels like it's alive, as if it's watching you. The creatures you encounter are terrifying, but it's the story that truly got under my skin. Soma makes you confront questions that are as disturbing as they are fascinating. By the end, I was left with this hollow feeling that no other game has ever given me. It's existential horror at its finest, and it's one of the most unique horror games I've ever played. Little Nightmares may look almost whimsical at first glance with its stylized visuals and a protagonist who's so tiny. But don't be fooled, this game is pure concentrated nightmare fuel. You play as Six, a small child trapped in a massive twisted world called the Maw. It's filled with grotesque creatures that look like they've walked straight out of a creepy children's book. The game plays with scale in a brilliant way. Since everything is larger than life, it gives you this constant feeling of being small, vulnerable, and helpless. I found Little Nightmares to be one of the most unsettling games I've ever played because it dives into childhood fears. There's something incredibly disturbing about being chased by these monstrous, gluttonous figures who are so much bigger and more powerful than you. The world of the Maw feels alive, breathing, and even hungry, and each level reveals a new layer of horror. By the end, I was left feeling like I'd just escaped a fever dream, one that was as beautiful as it was terrifying. If you're a fan of slasher movies, Until Dawn is the game you didn't know you needed. This is an interactive horror experience where your choices literally determine who lives and who dies. You're following a group of friends who've gone to a remote mountain cabin and naturally things go horribly wrong. The game takes inspiration from classic horror tropes, but it adds its own twists that keep you guessing. I loved Until Dawn because it makes you feel the weight of your decisions. It's like being the director of a horror movie, but every choice you make has consequences that come back to haunt you. The game even tracks your fears and tailors certain scares based on how you react to them. And let me tell you, it doesn't hold back when it comes to psychological horror. There are twists and reveals that had me on the edge of my seat, and just when I thought I'd figured it out, something completely unexpected would happen. It's an unforgettable cinematic horror experience. Fatal Frame Mask of the Lunar Eclipse is a classic horror game that might not be as well known as some on this list, but trust me, it's worth every second. This game plays with ghostly horror in a way that's so unique. You're on a haunted island armed only with a camera called the Camera Obscura, which you use to capture spirits and defend yourself from them. The twist? You have to get up close and personal with these ghosts to weaken them, which is just as terrifying as it sounds. I love how Fatal Frame doesn't just throw jump scares at you. Instead, it lets the fear slowly build up. The island is filled with an eerie, oppressive atmosphere, and the ghosts themselves have tragic backstories that make encounters feel as sad as they are terrifying. I found myself genuinely feeling unsettled by the end, not only because of the scares, but because of the melancholy that hangs over the whole game. It's a haunting experience in every sense of the word. Alien Isolation might just be the ultimate survival horror experience, especially if you're a fan of the Alien franchise. You play as Amanda Ripley, daughter of Ellen Ripley, and you're trapped on the Sevastopol space station with a xenomorph that hunts you with terrifying precision. What's crazy about this game is that the alien has its own advanced AI, meaning it learns from how you play, adapting to your tactics and forcing you to change up your approach constantly. I'll be honest, this game stressed me out in the best way possible. The tension is unrelenting because you know the alien is always nearby, lurking, listening. You have to rely on stealth use distractions and make tough choices to survive. The atmosphere is dripping with dread, and every creak or hiss could mean the alien is right around the corner. Alien Isolation nails the feeling of being hunted, and it's a masterclass in horror that'll leave you looking over your shoulder long after you've finished. And finally, let's talk about Resident Evil 7, a game that took the franchise back to its horror roots, and boy did it succeed. You play as Ethan Winters, who's searching for his missing wife in a creepy Louisiana mansion. But instead of the usual zombies, you're dealing with the twisted, cannibalistic Baker family who's just as terrifying as any monster. The first-person perspective was a game changer for the series, bringing you face-to-face with the horrors lurking in every corner of the mansion. What I love about Resident Evil 7 is how it balances traditional survival horror with fresh, disturbing scares. The Bakers feel like a constant threat. Each family member has their own twisted personality that makes encounters unpredictable and terrifying. The game also has plenty of psychological horror, keeping you on edge by making you question what's real and what's not. From the decrepit setting to the bone-chilling encounters, Resident Evil 7 manages to keep you on the edge of your seat until the very end. It's one of the best horror reboots, hands down.
Zoe! Get your ass back to the house! I will deal with you later! It's bad enough! Now you're warring against me with my own blood.
Alright, so those were my favorite 12 terrifying games that are sure to haunt you long after you've put down the controller. If you're a horror fan, these games will give you that pure, spine-tingling experience you're craving. Which of these games are you brave enough to try? And did I miss any of your favorites? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more content that'll keep you on the edge of your seat. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.